Mark Twain, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Chapter 22. Everybody was early at church that morning. When the service was over, Mrs. Thatcher came up to Mrs. Harper and said, "Is my Becky still sleeping? I thought she would be very tired." "Your Becky?" "Yes," said Mrs. Thatcher. "Didn't she stay with you last night?" "Why, no." Mrs. Thatcher turned pale and sat down on the bench. Aunt Polly passed the women. She said, "Good morning, Mrs. Thatcher. Good morning, Mrs. Harper. I think my Tom stayed at your house last night, one of you, and now he's afraid to come to church. I'll talk to him later." Mrs. Thatcher shook her head and turned paler than before. "He didn't stay with us," said Mrs. Harper, beginning to look worried. Aunt Polly said, "Joe Harper, have you seen my Tom this morning?" "No, I haven't." "When did you see him last?" Joe tried to remember, but he couldn't say. Then the women began asking the children and young teachers. They all said they didn't see Tom and Becky on that steamboat on the way back home. It was dark. One young man said that they could be still in the cave. Mrs. Thatcher and Aunt Polly began crying. The news about the missing children passed from one man to another, from group to group, from street to street. 5 minutes later, the whole town was up. In half an hour, 200 men were ready to go to the cave. The old Welshman came home late at night. He saw that Huck was still in bed. He had a fever. The doctors were all at the cave, so the widow Dallas came and took care of the boy. In the evening, the tired men began to come back to the town. In the morning, they continued their search. In one place, they found Becky and Tom on the wall. In other place, they found Becky's ribbon. They looked for the children 3 days more, but they couldn't find them. To be continued.